Charlie and Joe, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us, Ben. Really appreciate it.
Great to be here.
Great to have you on. I've been willing to get you three on for a little while, so it's fantastic to have you finally on to chat about how things are going for you. Happy 5th birthday, needless to say. We're going to talk about that in a little while, but first of all, just give us a little, how's PR? How's the market out there at the moment? Q1 seemed to go quite well, didn't it? But it's been a bit of a handbrake from Trump, or are we ploughing on regardless?
Yeah, I think, well, firstly, thanks for having us, Ben. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. It's the first time the three of us have ever been on a podcast, so it's a seminal moment. We'll see if we manage not to talk over each other too much. The UK market, we obviously have a foot in both now. Has definitely been tough for us over the last 12 months, I would say. We've managed to eke out some pretty strong growth, but a lot of that's been through organic and then kind of taking smaller briefs and adding on new services. So we've managed to get the growth done, but I don't think the broader climate's been as strong as we've seen previously. Obviously, we've got a B2B and tech perspective on things. A lot of the briefs we expected in January were then pushed out to April, and now they've been pushed out again to June. So we're definitely seeing that happen, and that's with those bigger, sizable, 6 pages with a decent budget number at the bottom type briefs. In terms of what we put it down to, I mean, we've heard, I think it was a year ago, it was the general election, then it was the budget, then it was the US election. Now it's tariffs. I still think there's a lot of uncertainty out there, and people are hanging on to their money until they're clear of what's happening.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, listen, I don't pretend it's easy times. Definitely isn't. But that feedback does contrast a bit with the consumer side, where I get the feeling there's a bit more going on. It's really competitive. It's hard to win. There's decisions delayed. But I get the feeling there's a few more briefs out there, which I can't really quite justify. You'd think it would either be across the board, handbrake applied, or carry on. I get the tech argument, but we're kind of a bit beyond that now, are we? I don't know.
I think maybe one dynamic, Ben, is that we are still probably an 85% retained program agency, and that's quite standard, as you well know. That's pretty standard in the B2B tech space. And so where I think in the consumer world, clients are perhaps throwing out, budgets for projects and campaigns a bit more liberally, I think if you're making a decision to invest in an agency for the next 24, 36 months, that is by definition a decision that perhaps takes more thought, more planning, more engagement with procurement. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why we're seeing a bit less. But again, that's our perspective. Others may be seeing something different.
But what's your you mentioned those 60-page briefs or whatever you said. What is your sweet spot on budget now? I guess it's a range, but just for a company of your size, do you have when do you I'm not letting you go for quite a range, but what's your because they can be too big, can't they? Do you know what I mean? And then but obviously they can also be too small.
Do you want to take that, Charlie? Because I think I'll give the wrong answer.
Never in a million years, Jay. Yeah, they absolutely can be too big, and they can be too small. And I think for us it really depends. Like, so much of it is about feeling that we're working for the right brand, and that we're doing the right thing as well. We've had to stay true to our mission to do B2B creativity and actually be prepared to turn things down that aren't actually about that. Things that go around the edges, the things that added on services that is tempting to say yes to. But we're kind of really, really strict, and we don't try and bite off more than we can chew. But yeah, I think so much of our work now is, I will get to a budget figure, I promise. But so much of our work now is now kind of what we call global, right? So spread between the UK and North America, and that's also a big driver for us in figuring out whether to pursue a brief or not. But certainly the budget's way bigger in North America. So I think kind of a mid-range retainer could be anything in the region of $25,000 to $30,000, whereas I think in the UK you're seeing that kind of a fair bit lower, quite bluntly. I think anything around £15,000, something around that. But equally, we do make some exceptions. If it's just a piece of work that we think the team is going to absolutely love working on, but the budget's not big, that's genuinely a massive driver for us. If we think it's just an amazingly cool brand to be associated with, or if there's some sort of unfortunately you can't really pin it down more than is there just some X factor someone that we would just love to work with, not a person or a brand. So we're kind of strict and not strict with our criteria.
Yeah, well, it's the old fame or fortune test, isn't it? I suppose to an extent, anyway. I did the other bit on that is it's always tempting to moan about UK budgets, isn't it? But when we got Matt Neal on the show a little while back, and the US in terms of population is about 6 times the size of the UK, right? So it kind of follows that the PR budget is going to broadly be 6 times the size, so that possibly shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, and maybe it's fair enough.
Well, I think in our sector, Ben, as well, the big difference, I think, is that so many of the B2B and technology headquarters are in the States. And if you work into headquarters, you have access to the C-suite much more easily, and you get access to the bigger budgets and the bigger assignments. And I think that's always been a challenge of being a tech agency in the European region.
Right. Well, I was going to come on to that, but you brought it up nicely. Let's go straight into that. Sorry. Have you just answered why did you launch in the US? Was that, it's kind of lots of PR firms want to do it. Not that many do it quite as early on as you did in your life cycle. But what was it, an opportunity? Was it an ambition? What was it all about?
Yeah, so we had a conversation with a former client of ours, a lady called Kim Albright, who just become CMO of Medius, which is an accounts payable software company, which is a lot more sexy than it sounds, Ben. Let me tell you, we've done some terrific work for them. And she said, look, I'm looking to hire an agency in Europe and in the US. Can you stand up a PR agency in 90 days in North America? Because if you can, I'll let you pitch for it. To which I replied, yes. And then we spent the next 3 months, hiring a kind of small staff that we felt could deliver it. So there was an anchor client and a decent amount of revenue there if we were able to win the contract, which we did. So that was part of it. I think we always felt, though, that we have such a big network in the States anyway. The 3 of us worked at Weber Shandwick for a combined 35 years, and we had so much. And there's so many colleagues in the New York, West Coast, etc., around the world that we'd work with. And, we made a list of 100 names of people that we thought would have a cup of coffee with us, introduce us to someone in their network and perhaps give us a brief. And so that was the other thing that gave us the confidence to go and do it.
How many briefs did you get from that? How many briefs did you get from those coffees? Yeah,
so I would say the first 7 clients in the US came from that initial 100.
Right.
So that was a combination of existing clients that ported business into the US with us, and some former colleagues who were in comms director positions who gave us a project, or in some cases gave us a retainer. Now we're obviously at the point where a lot of those people have moved. We've built a reputation in that domestic market for our great work, and people are starting to talk about us. But those initial first few briefs came from those coffees.
It's 7%'s not bad, is it? I was trying to think. Well, that's not a bad return rate in terms of actual
pretty good ROI. Yeah.
I was going to say that why did you succeed where lots of other firms have failed? But actually, it's a bit more nuanced than that, isn't it? There are quite a few. It's tough to do, right? So it doesn't work for everybody. But there's definitely a trend where it's been easier for technology-based PR firms to make it rather than, should we say, consumer PR firms. And you're the latest example, rarefied example of a UK independent who's pulled it off in America.
Yeah, I think we did a couple of things that were perhaps a bit counterintuitive, and I think certainly quite gutsy. Perhaps we didn't realize at the time just how gutsy they were. We made some very big senior hires out the gate. As I often say, we had over £1 million invested in the first year in that US agency. We didn't just find some AD level freelancer to kind of be our US lead. We had Tim Fry, one of the most experienced tech comms guys on the planet. Emma Hedges, EVP, formerly of Weber Shandwick. We also took the decision, and it was a brave decision, to move one of our top performers, Dan Bird, out into the US. Get him a visa. We've also sent Lauren Payne McLeod, another one of our creative superstars, out to America. These guys are moving away from the UK business, so that creates some risk. Could we effectively replace them and all of that good stuff? But what they've been able to do as a team out in the States is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, they're already in the top 150 US agencies. After just 3 years that's in their own right. So I think, we hired the right people. We went in hard, we went in senior, and it's paid off.
Yeah, but it's gutsy, isn't it? Because I mean, talent in America is notoriously expensive.
It is, yeah. Recruitment fees are expensive as well, and we definitely cheated by going back and hiring people that we'd worked with before. So Tim, Dan, Emma, we knew how high quality they were. We knew we were getting premium people who were going to not just be able to win business and service business, but build a culture and set a vision for what they wanted the agency to become. And they've done us proud out there in the US. It's been remarkable. But yeah, salaries are very high. But as you've just said, Ben, budgets six times bigger as well. So it kind of nets off.
Yeah, totally. Just sort of going back to the beginning of Fight or Flight a little bit. When you first started, you had a nice positioning around the importance of creativity in B2B. Which I think all of us are. Why wouldn't you be a fan of that, if you see what I mean? And I've no doubt that worked as a point of difference. Did it get you where you needed it? Was that part of the reason of your growth, or was that just a point of difference to start things off? Because I've always felt there's a lot more noise around B2B creativity than perhaps you see from the campaigns. Not all the campaigns, I would add.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I think the short answer to your question is, yes, it is working from a client perspective, right? But I think there's a kind of a longer story that connects to your point about positioning, because creativity for us is much more than a point of difference. It's more than just some positioning. It's actually kind of the core of what we do. I think a point of difference on its own, a kind of surface level, it's not defendable. If anyone can say that they do what you do, it doesn't help you build like a moat around the agency. It doesn't prevent Me Too's from coming in and trying to eat your supper. If you just kind of say something and hope that people are convinced from a positioning perspective, right? And I think if you look at point of difference in agency world, quite a few of them are not all that defendable because they aren't core. And I think we know in big agency land, right? Not to name names, but some of these agencies change their point of difference like you change your socks, right? And we chose more fundamentally to try to do the thing that builds the moat. And we knew that because it's quite hard to do this in B2B, it's quite hard to consistently churn out quality creative work. If we could crack that, we'd have a huge competitive advantage that was a little bit easier to defend.
Right.
But I think, look, have clients bought that as much as we'd hoped? I think yes, they have.
Okay.
And I think part of the reason is because it isn't just positioning. Our chief client officer on this call will be able to tell you the percentage of clients that we've got that are doing kind of creative work with us. But I try to look kind of outside. I would probably estimate, if you look at the B2B market, it's a little bit less than 5% of the total B2B market is doing truly brave creative work, the work that takes you out your comfort zone and builds fame. And we just see that as a massive opportunity, that 95.
And it gets you as part of the conversation as well, doesn't it? I mean, that's the other thing. I mean, you kind of, if you're from a winning new business perspective, it gets you on the long list and then the short list, and so it kind of gets you through the door as a positioning statement. And obviously, then if you go on to do some work that's creative, then that's also done its job, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we want to go into a pitch situation with clients already thinking about our reputation for doing bold work, because it makes the pitch conversation easier. It makes the selection process a little bit easier. So yeah, I mean, I take your point from a positioning perspective, but it isn't something that we look to position ourselves, in the market as. It's more a thing that we do, and I hope that the proof of our work is enough to build that reputation on the outside.
Right. Sometimes when I see agencies launch and they have quite a narrow proposition, you kind of think, yeah, that's good to get you noticed, but then you're going to have to tweak it quite quickly. But I guess with creativity, it's broad enough, isn't it, that you can, it's forever going to be in demand.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And we are actually seeing other agencies in our space come out and talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely fantastic, because it's such a huge market. You know, we don't see that as a competitive threat. We think, great, some other agencies are coming out talking to their clients about doing bolder work. And the more creative work that comes out of this sector, the more work there's going to be for us to do in the future, because you know it's hard to get some of this work through.
A rising tide floats all boats and all that sort of thing. I was chatting about it with somebody else the other day. It's some interesting stuff going on with the senior in-house talent for in tech right now, isn't it? I'd say there's some senior people. There's some senior people who seem to. There's quite a bit of change in those senior roles at the moment as well. And there's some younger up and coming people who've got some. Who are not quite as senior as perhaps the people who preceded them. So it's an interesting space, it seems to me, from an in-house talent scenario for tech clients right now.
I agree, and I think one thing that's interesting as well, Ben, as a build, is I think another thing that's enabling us to get some of this work made and through, whether it's Roland DG or Expedia or Media, some of these bits of work we've created that been very impactful, is we are seeing quite a lot of consumer folk moving into B2B and tech. And I think that's really interesting as well, because they're coming in and going, well, where's my big creative idea? Where's my influencer strategy? Where's my, how are you going to get me on the one show? Like, where's that plan? And I think for the agencies that have sat there and kind of got away with like primarily trade media relations program and, going to 3 trade shows a year and doing a media program, I think that they're suddenly realizing they're standing there a little bit naked. And that's brilliant for people like us who want to work with those types of clients. I mean, if I look at someone like Roland Stephen Davis, who's the CMO there, one of our earliest clients, he came from American Airlines, he came from Expedia, and he wanted to do bigger, bolder, creative stuff and shake things up in the market. So you do need that partner. And I think that's an interesting trend. I think the more people that come over from that consumer brand world, and it's not a picnic. It's complex stuff. B2B. It's different to consumer. It's a lot more tougher. You've got a much higher bar, I think, to meet in terms of a strategy and narrative, etc. But I do think the ambition of some of those guys has helped to reshape the sector, and I think that's a good positive trend.
Yeah, and I think to go on top of that, what that gives us the opportunity to do is to line up a slightly different kind of bench of creative talent on the agency side. Our UK head of creative, Kate Sargenson, comes from the consumer marketing world. She was head of consumer at Weber Shandwick before she joined Fight or Flight. And, our ambition is to build out consumer grade tactics and deploy them in the B2B space, and sometimes to target quite narrow B2B audiences by almost kind of renting large consumer audiences and trying to build fame that way, and having that kind of consumer grade talent on the inside, as well as people that we can match consumer kind of oriented creatives on the client side. It gives us greater opportunities to do the kind of real kind of fame building work that we really enjoy doing.
It's interesting though, isn't it? And I don't think this is a B2B point, actually. It's a whole PR point. Agencies like you want to do more ambitious work, don't you? But that relies on having quite a senior and perhaps more an influential person on the other side who's able to get budget and persuade senior stakeholders internally to make those brave decisions. Is that a challenge that you have? Is that something that's getting worse, getting better? Where are we on that journey?
I think if we're just talking about comms, Ben, you might make an argument that comms as a whole is not a senior function within B2B, right? At least comparatively, because B2B organizations tend to be led by product. And that's a bit, I've always found that a bit odd, because it's hard to imagine that the guy that invents, I don't know, a cherry flavor of your chewing gum having much more power than the director of comms. But in B2B, this happens kind of all the time. And you have to understand that in B2B, reputation is probably even more important than it is in B2C. You know, people are betting their careers on buying your product, so they have to be able to trust it, right? So there's a huge role for brand in B2B, but lots of companies, lots of big brands in B2B can't shake the idea that product is king. And so you do find in lots of these firms that the comms role is not as elevated as it might be on the consumer side, and that can make it harder to get this slightly braver stuff through, because the comms team doesn't enjoy that lofty position that they might do in a consumer firm.
Sure, no, that's a good point. I think I mentioned it in my intro, but we haven't really talked about it. But this rapid rate of growth you've had, from 0 to 8 million in 5 years, anniversary year, birthday show, all that. I think it's important to just think about that for a moment. It can become monopoly money if we're not careful, right? But for, there's a lot of pitches, there's a lot of campaigns, there's a lot of work, there's a lot of hires, there's probably a lot of late nights, a lot of pain. How have you guys managed to grow that rapidly when, frankly, every other PR firm in the world wants to do the same? You're not the only, you're not. There's other people who've grown quickly over this period as well, but there's not that many of you. How have you done it?
I think it's a really good question, and quite honestly, like it's a combination of so many different things. If I knew the answer, we'd definitely distill it and start selling it, I think, for sure. But I think it's just so many different things coming together at the same time. And I think, first of all, we've already discussed it at some length, but I think our proposition about creative B2B has obviously resonated with clients. So we're standing up for B2B being fun and interesting and cool, and refusing to let it be dull, and kind of being prepared to be kind of the rascals on the back of the school bus. And I think that's obviously struck a chord. I think quite clearly we definitely wouldn't have a business if it wasn't for people wanting to get involved with that. But I think there's also a load of other kind of factors that are harder to pin down. I think there's 3 of us. Quite honestly, I know it sounds a really basic thing to say, but the vast majority of our work, the DNA of that opportunity is in it's a former colleague, a former client, a recommendation from a former client. So you can kind of slightly scale it. There are challenges of having 3 founders, but there are so many benefits. So I think that is a really important part that sounds obvious, but definitely shouldn't be overlooked. But then there are loads of other kind of maybe more operational factors as well. And I think first off, we did take some risk. Maybe we didn't quite realize the degree of risk we were taking at the time, but we were really committed to hiring ahead of the curve. And what we didn't try and do is just try and do everything ourselves, and maybe work with some freelancers. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that strategy, but that's not what we decided to do. And we were prepared to go off and hire people and get the checkbook out and pay above market rate salaries for some top consultants, for some big agencies like Weber and Edelman and Teneo and so on, but also from some really specialist places and people we'd worked with before as well. So I think the fact that we were at no stage were we looking to just get as many clients as we can and just do it in just the most cost-effective way possible and hope for the best. Like we were really trying to build something. So yeah, I would genuinely say that that's been a major part of it. And I guess also, Weber taught us so many things. I think we did build this kind of infrastructure that you need, and all that process that sometimes is a little bit dry. Every now and then in agencies kind of gets in the way, but Weber does teach you so many good things about process and the need for all of these systems. So pretty much from day one, we built out, and it kind of they obviously evolved with time. We built out a finance function, a proper ops function, talent and an HR function, and we look back now and we're extremely pleased that we did, and we hired some top people like Fran Rodriguez and Gemma Ashley and Annie Flexman, joined us, and they've just pushed it onto a different level. So I think one of the things that I like hearing most is when people join Firefly, a lot of them are saying, I kind of figured it might be a real startup vibe, it might be a little bit chaotic, and actually lots of people have arrived and said, this isn't chaotic at all. Like, it's really structured. It's really well resourced. Like, at no stage are you just trying to get away with as few people as you can and chase margin. You're actually really making sure that you look after the culture and make sure people aren't spread across too many things. So I think it's a combination of that. But the other really obvious part is, as Joe's spoken about already, is that we had the guts to go off and open up in North America. And I think as a future driver for the business, that sounds obvious, but it's obviously going to continue to be absolutely massive.
Yeah, it's an interesting just to hear you talk, because you're all quite entrepreneurial, aren't you? Clearly, you've taken risks. You've literally ticked every single entrepreneurial box. But you've also all been in Weber for whatever it was, 20 years. So you've got that you're coming from that corporate background, corporate expertise, corporate knowledge. So it's quite a rarefied mix, that one, and it's obviously worked. So yeah, it's good to hear.
People often say, Ben, do you wish you'd done it earlier? Right, because we were, 15 years into a Weber career by the time we did it. And my answer is always, we did it at exactly the right time. And the reason I say that is because we knew we'd run functions by that point. So we knew what it took to run a business that, sometimes you have to make tough decisions like letting poor performers go, the importance of having the rigor of forecasting and how to go win big in new business breakthroughs, how to develop a proposition, but also crucially, and I think you will like this because you're a man who likes the external factors, and you're a cynic, our network had got senior enough and gone into decision-making roles by the time we left to set up our agency. So the people we picked up the phone to were head of comms and comms directors, where if we'd done it 5 years before, they probably still would have been quite junior in-house PR people. And I think you look at a lot of our earlier client wins, like your LinkedIn's and your Expedias, those are really good examples where we just had a really strong person from our network that had got to that point in their career where they could potentially bring us in.
And the other point was the absolute crucial element of that in those early years is that you're not conflicted out, because very often you can have all sorts of contacts, but you're not allowed to touch them. And you see, promising agencies spend more on lawyers than they do on talent. I've seen firms go bust on that. How much of the work, just when you were chatting about it there, Charlie, how much of the work is corporate versus campaign led? Because there's quite a bit of corporate within. I get the feeling anyway. It's quite a bit of corporate advice and counsel, corporate counsel is what I was looking for, alongside the creative campaign stuff, which is quite a nice mix.
Yeah, definitely. It's a really significant percentage, I would say, and I think the creative campaigns are we're starting to get a really good track record, and we spend a lot of focus with Dave and the creative team working up those ideas. But I think you can only really build those ideas if you've got the trust of clients, and that they genuinely believe that you understand the business, and that they back you to do something that's maybe a little bit out of their comfort zone, a bit scary. And they kind of feel like it's okay, like Firefly are going to get their arms around us, and everything's going to be okay. And the CEO is not going to suddenly start shouting at us for doing a campaign that's maybe a little bit loud and a bit brave. And I think you kind of have to earn those stripes as well. We do get people who come to us straight off the bat, requesting that, especially having seen various award wins and things like that. But I think a lot of our campaign work is actually the sum effort of many hundreds and thousands of hours of doing all of the hard yards on earnings announcements, all the hard yards on bylines and understanding business and going in for reviews and quite honestly, we're not kind of ashamed of this in any way or apologetic. A lot of press office work as well, and I think it's often the same clients that are commissioning those campaigns. So yeah, it's definitely built on that sort of bedrock of doing the business day in, day out on some of the more corporate side as well.
And you were talking about your growth and how quick it's been over the last 5 years. The challenges of that growth, I mean, they're a lot, right?
Yeah, 100%. There's a lot, and I think the biggest one I would say is culture, and I think being able to still be this kind of like cheeky agency, doing things a bit differently and being fun and cool and being talked about. I think we've seen that it's very easy to kind of slip back into doing things in a slightly more dry way. And I think being able to still inspire all of the people that give them the reason why they join Firefly. We get people joining us because they want some of that culture, and they've heard about it. And I think being able to make sure that we stick to that so that it's still fun and informal and entrepreneurial, and that anybody in the whole team can have a great idea, and it's not very hierarchical at all. And I think that making sure you don't lose focus on the people is a really, really big thing. And I think as soon as we start fixating too much on the challenges of growth in terms of like margin and you know, how do you hire, etc., I think you start overlooking the number one thing, which is the people that you've already got. And I think an agency business model it's so straightforward. I mean, it's people and laptops, and our laptops work fine. So like we just need to be concentrating on everything that you know, nauseatingly we call them FOFers, but all the things that FOFers need, like reminding them why they joined Firefly in the first place. So I think that's really big, and we, you know, especially with Gemma Ashley, our head of people, and Fran Rodriguez, who runs operations, you know, we spend so much time making sure that the agency life is fun. And that's
hard to do when you're, you know, I don't know what I'm trying to work out the maths now, but you're probably growing at, I don't know, 25% a year. I don't know but that's a lot of hires.
Yeah.
It's tough to do all of that. All of what you just said is, of course, the right thing to do, but it's not easy when you're growing at the pace you guys have done it.
Yeah, it's not at all. It's all quite a sort of delicate equilibrium. Like one thing goes wrong, and actually, like it sends something else out of whack as well. But I think you know, I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think like it's a lot of hires, and I think that, you know, the number one thing in my experience that winds agency people up is not having enough people in the agency, because then all of a sudden, you know, it's just a race to the bottom. It's people are too busy. They get understandably, they get burnt out. They start getting a bit fed up. The client suffers. If the work suffers, you're not going to get the license to do the bigger creative campaigns. And I think for us, like, whilst we don't pretend that we're perfect, we really do focus hard on making sure that we're really well staffed. And as soon as we think, like, you know, in a couple of months we're probably going to need a hire, let's get on with it. Let's get on with it ASAP. And I know that, again, that sounds so basic, but making sure that people aren't too stretched, and, you know, really stressed trying to juggle a million things. It's, you know, I think that it often it's not much more complicated than that. And it's very,
and all that stuff's easy to do when you're growing, isn't it? That's the other bit of that. You can do it. So if you're not making the margin, you're not growing, all that, and that's where, if you're on the wave, try and stay on it. I got loads more questions, so I've got to move on. Just on the broad tech market in the UK, you know, we saw Deliveroo this week. I know they've just been bought. Where are you? You've got some nice UK tech organisations as your own clients. Are you optimistic, pessimistic, somewhere in between about the state of UK tech currently?
Yeah, I think always optimistic. I think personally, I'm quite an optimistic and upbeat guy anyway. But I think we've got evidence to be optimistic. I don't think it's blind optimism, because we've got a bunch of this evidence in the form of some of our clients. So I mean, we're working with the likes of Quantexa, which is, you know, an absolutely unbelievable UK tech success story, scaled out into so many different markets. You're also working with the likes of Motorway, like a really brilliant business, UK focused business that is just doing so well and growing so fast and has so, you know, such high ambitions. And I think for us, that's you know, it's also important to remember that the UK's contributed like such a huge proportion of all European unicorns. And I think there is so much talent in the UK, and AI, fintech, life sciences. And I think that these are all sectors where so many of our clients are thriving. And yeah, sure, I'm sure that founders argue there's more that the UK could be doing to support unicorns. But I think for us, yeah, I think you've got to be optimistic.
Fine. You heard it here first, folks. It's all going to be okay. So you've obviously pulled off a nice trick in the US. You know, as I look at it, you'd be mad not to try and pull that trick off again, wouldn't you? Where are you going to launch next?
Yeah, I think that is a great question. I think that there is so much potential still untapped in North America, which as you can see, we're having a massive swing at. But I think, yeah, we're definitely eyeing expansion into the Middle East, Singapore, and, you know, either through owned offices or minority investments. So I think we're very, very actively looking there for further expansion, but making sure that we don't take our eye off the ball on any of the things that we've already got going.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And only you could call breaking the US market a nice trick. I absolutely love that.
But you're right. Just to go back on Charlie's point, it must weigh on your mind whether to roll the dice again or look after what you've got. And there's obviously a moment where you will want to roll the dice, but it's not an easy predicament, that, is it?
It's difficult, and I think that people tend to underestimate the danger of doing nothing. And when we started this, we had no money. We all put £3,000 into a bank account. We paid ourselves 0 for 9 months, and now we're sitting on a lot of cash, and we have a really successful, fast-growing agency. So you compare the risk we took then to the risks we're taking now. I mean, quite like your monopoly money analogy. I think at times, it's kind of helpful to frame it that way. It's kind of helpful to say, look, this is another gamble that we're going to take. And I think we talked about this in the PRmoment. I talked about this in the PRmoment masterclass that I did last year. Charlie's very fond of winding me up because I like to drop that then into as many conversations as I can. Oh yeah, the PRmoment masterclass. But I made this point, which is, we've also made a number of bad bets. We invested about 50 grand in analytics, which Charlie begged me not to, and was a complete disaster. We literally set fire to 50K, and we've had other sort of misadventures. So it's not all gone 100% right, but we'll keep making those gambles because the UK has been a bit slower this year, but our US business is growing at absolute extremely fast rate, and we wouldn't be in that position had we not taken the bet. And so we will absolutely keep doing it. You can count on that.
It's true. Very often you have to launch things to grow in this current market, don't you? Which is I'm definitely right. Now, as 3 white straight founders in home counties, how do you approach the need for fight or flight to have strong DE&I credentials?
Yeah, it's something that we were very focused on, Ben, right from the start. Even when we did our launch photo, it was sort of quite striking how, we'd have this problem kind of as we built the agency. And so, we've been very focused on it. And I think in the first couple of years, it kind of fixed itself organically, right? We hired some great talent, and it just so happened that a number of the people we hired were female. A lot of the people that we hired who were brilliant were from ethnic minority backgrounds, and some of our superstars. And so, but we kind of walked into it a little bit, where I think in the last couple of years, we've done a much better job. And again, coming back to Charlie's point about growth, I think the bigger you get, the more deliberate you have to be in embedding these types of strategies. We've done all the things you'd expect agencies to do, getting involved with the likes of people like us, which I think is a brilliant platform run by Shiraz and Doreen. So they do quarterly events, mentoring some of the speakers, that kind of stuff. Charlie and I were both on the CIPR reverse mentoring course. We've also done things like partnering up with Taylor Bennett Foundation, etc. So we've done a lot of that stuff that you would kind of expect. Braver has helped us with a lot of our recruitment. Again, definitely would recommend those guys. But I think where I'm sort of most proud of the work we've done is actually going into the business and listening. So we set up these 6 listening sessions every year where people can come in and talk about different topics, from sexuality to being an ethnic minority PR person to neurodiversity, etc. And it's just an hour where people just share their experiences, share their feelings, talk about things that they have found difficult in their career. And I thought they'd be problem diagnosis sessions, but they've actually been part of the solution. Just that there's no substitute for hearing people share their truth and share their stories. I didn't even realize we had a kind of a Jewish member of our team and a Palestinian member of our team on the same call, talking about what it was like from their different perspectives, which was unbelievably powerful for the entire team. And I think you can put all these policies in place, and we've done it. You can introduce all these training sessions and work with third-party providers and do it. And you absolutely have to make that investment, and we have done it. But actually just hearing it from someone's point of view and hearing their truth is so important. And one of the things we have done, and we'll leave it here, Ben, is we've done these things called the FOF files, where we have ripped off Desert Island Discs, and everybody has their own FOF file where they tell the story of their life through 5 tracks, their 5 favorite bits of music. There are some absolute bangers in there. There are some horror show tracks that have been selected. But again, it's a great way of learning about your colleagues and just listening into an episode for half an hour, hosted by our very own Kate Sarge. So again, we've actually majored a lot on just educating each other about who we are. We're at about 22% ethnic minority employees, which is pretty good. But we're not where we need to be in leadership. So that's our big focus: is how do we boost representation at the top levels in the business, and what are the things we need to do to get there? That's the next big challenge.
Right. Well, Desert Island Disc, a PR Desert Island Disc was the original idea for the PRmoment podcast, but
all right.
Well, I was being naive and stupid, wasn't I? Clearly, I'm not going to get away with the copyright.
Ben, unless you want to listen to a lot of Argentinian reggae from Charlie Meredith-Hardy, I suggest we move on.
Fine. The implications of AI we've touched on it with our AI in PR masterclass that's coming up. But the implications for PR firms are significant. The implications for in-house teams are also very significant. Where is sort of fight or flight on that AI as an opportunity versus AI as a threat spectrum?
Yeah, well, I think we've been talking about big bets, haven't we? I'm not sure whether it's monopoly money, but we're treating AI as a huge business opportunity for us. And we've just announced our first head of AI, Dan Bird. I'm sure you saw the news come out, because he's soon going to be appearing on one of your PR masterclasses. So Dan's remit split into two, basically. So he's first of all, he's going to look at rebuilding some of our operational processes from the ground up. And this is just about kind of, spiking some of those important but fairly kind of time heavy tasks like briefing docs and, measurement and tracking and brand monitoring and research, spiking all of that stuff with AI to see if we can just make things a little bit faster and easier. And then I think the second big thing is about product opportunity. So it's funny for us because lots of our clients sell software as a service. So whether that's kind of HR software, tax software, whatever it is. And it's kind of quite exciting for us to move into that same software as a service space ourselves.
It's exciting and dangerous, David, I reckon. But
yeah, well, exactly. But what one of our first products is actually called Media Trainer, and it's an AI media training product, and it listens to your spokesperson interview that might kind of be done ordinarily with a human trainer, and it'll immediately give you a story and a headline written in the style of the media outlet that you're looking for coverage in. And, just like a real journalist, it can be kind of nice to you and it can be nasty. But it also kind of spits out, pointers on how you could have told your story better, even suggests how you might have approached some of the questions maybe differently given your objectives. So look, we're really excited about the opportunity to sell this kind of software, maybe on a subscription model, and kind of ape some of the product strategies of our clients. That kind of opportunity is, we wouldn't have that without AI. So yeah, we're 100% positive about the opportunity.
So it's sort of a plug-in, a plug-in element to the consultancy offer. And is that just to go on that media trainer, which if anyone's thinking, it's the trainer bit is AI with capitals, isn't it? Is the branding. But is that video? Is that as do we film Joe, and then your piece of software then gives Joe written feedback? How does it work in terms of his how he's done with his interview?
Yeah, so it's all connected into how you might do a remote media training. You might do an interview on team software. There's a plug-in into that software, so you'll get the transcript. It'll then run through the transcript in real time and turn that into a piece of copy in the style of, I don't know, the Times or the FT or whatever the title is that you're targeting. But then within that software package on the screen, it'll also give you your hints and tips. So you'll have a human trainer in the room, and they can then choose to either kind of deliver some of those tips as media trainer has recommended, but also they can go on top and use their own experience to add their own tips and techniques.
Fine. I was going to say there's the listenership of the PRmoment podcast from media trainers has just decreased quite significantly, I suspect. But there we go. Does it work, David? That's the key bit, isn't it? Does it work?
Yeah, it works really well, and I think as well. A lot of people will be like, well, why are you choosing to disrupt yourself with a piece of software? Because surely you can sell media training and people can do it. I think it works really well as an adjunct to your media training offer. So you might choose to do, let's say, if you're a global agency, you might choose to use Media Trainer to train lots of different spokespeople worldwide on a particular product launch, for example. But you might save training the chairman or the CEO to do that in person with an experienced human media trainer. Or you might choose to combine the two in one session, right? So here's what AI says, and then maybe here's what your human media trainer says. So I think it works in a number of different scenarios.
But the other thing is, if you don't do it, someone else will. So you've got to be on the front foot with these things, haven't you? And on the same note, on the wider point, you just learn so much from doing this stuff. We're doing something, we're having a little play with AI with on one of our editorial products, and it kind of, you just learn so much by going through that process, don't you? And you start thinking about other stuff you may or may not be able to do. But if you haven't done the original thing, you won't have had that thought. Do you know what I mean? It's the way we've all got to get with it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's right, and I think it changes. I think it's quite interesting to look at it from an agency perspective, right? So, how might it change, like, the client offer? And an agency business is quite an interesting place to experiment with AI, because you've always had this traditional kind of client delivery equation, right? It's cheap, fast, or good, and I think like the kind of the saying goes, you can only pick two of those. You can't have all three. So as a client, if you want something fast and you also want it to be cheap, you can't reliably expect the quality to be 100%, because in effect, fast and cheap is a bit like asking your agency people to cut corners, right? But I think the promise with AI is one day, and I don't think we're there yet, but I think one day quite soon, the promise with AI is from an agency perspective is to complete that triangle, right? To try and get good, fast, and cheap consistently delivered every time, right? So using technology to resolve that old delivery conflict that we've all faced. And I think that's really, really kind of quite interesting. And we're really excited to kind of experiment with AI, both at the operational level, right? So we can do things faster and maybe do things cheaper, and hopefully kind of pass on some of those savings to clients. And then also to kind of up level the offer a little bit, because if you've got people that are spending less time on kind of the slightly more mundane but really important tasks, they've got more thinking time. And it means that your human offer, your face-to-face spending time with clients side of the service offering becomes much better, because you've just got more space to do it. So I think, look, lots of people are slightly terrified about how AI is going to change things. I'm a relentless optimist when it comes to AI, because I just think it's going to improve the service offering, the human service offering that we can deliver for clients so much.
Yeah, totally right. It'd be remiss of me not to say, but anyone who wants to accelerate their journey of AI and PR, do take a look at the program for our next PR Masterclass AI in PR, which is promoted widely on the homepage of PRmoment. And I would echo that, David. Yeah, if you don't get on the front foot, somebody else will. With fight or flight growth, folks, I mean, you've been on an incredible journey, haven't you, over the last 5 years? It's going to be tough to keep this up, isn't it?
I think it's tough for everybody out there, but look, I can tell you the aim, and the great thing about a podcast is that no one's writing this down, right? So you can't come back at me.
AI is.
You got AI running in the background. Look, I think we aim to at least double in size over the next 5 years. I think that's a reasonable target for us, because we've got kind of a few different ways that we're aiming to do that. I think, as Joe talked through, there is a huge opportunity in North America, and we're seeing already some really amazing opportunities for deep client work over there. And I think as well, Charlie talked about the Middle East. There's quite fascinating, right? Because you've got the tech and B2B markets are being driven by fairly substantial investments in AI infrastructure. And so there's going to be lots of opportunities there for B2B focused firms to go in and support clients. We really want to be part of that market. And I think we're also looking at kind of new service offers in particular sectors. So sustainability is a big one. Healthcare and health tech, that's another big one. Fintech, and we're finding already that these sectors are already kind of delivering fairly strong fees, and also creating opportunities for some of our kind of next generation of leaders, right, to go and lead those offers. So it's kind of a double win, really.
Right.
And then I would say just lastly, over the last couple of years, particularly, we're starting to move a little bit more upstream into the CMO's office, getting some of that bigger kind of budget work that Joe was alluding to. And some of our bigger campaigns are about kind of delivering a little bit more integrated brand and creative campaigns. And in some cases, actually, we're seeing comms-focused clients delivering this type of work too. So that's a really exciting opportunity. And I think to support that, therefore, we're looking at building out brand design, video, digital capabilities. And I think, look, that's not just about making sure that we're able to meet those opportunities, but it's also about making sure that we're growing in the right way, keeping the quality levels high for some of that more integrated content-driven work.
Great stuff. Now, as a UK independent, we're all Brits. We like to see British companies do well. You've got a bridgehead in the US, as we've talked about. You must have had some inquiries, have you, from potential purchasers? There's been quite a bit of M&A activity over the last 2 years. Probably the majority of it has been from PE firms, but not exclusively. Where are you guys on that?
I think I don't normally dare speak for Dave and Jay, but I will on this occasion because and I think we, all three of us are very much on the same page that we are very much not in sell mode. We're quite honestly we're all still great mates. We're honestly having the time of our lives doing fight or flight, and we see we've got loads of ambition and I think if anything, actually, we're as discussed, we're actually much more likely to be looking at buying and investing. But yes, it is fair to say we've had some tentative approaches from various big agencies, but certainly I'd say we've also had a bunch of approaches from private equity looking at kind of potential buy and build deals, and none of those have been have progressed far at all. But I think it's fair to say that the UK market is trickier than normal at the moment, and I think it probably therefore makes sense that some of the PE firms with capital that they can go off and deploy are probably the most active in the space. But we're very much loving what we're doing and wanting to keep it going.
I mean, it's always interesting, isn't it, to sort of look at those founders post earnout a few years on and see how it's gone. And it's fair to say it's patchy. It's not, patchy's probably being a bit kind, but it certainly doesn't always work out. But you've got to decrease your risk and cash in at some point. So it's a tricky, it's a dilemma, isn't it?
It's a tricky balance. You've got to obviously not be naive about what the market is going to think of you as you grow. And you've got to always have a bit of an eye on, whether the decisions you're making are going to, be, positive from an external investment perspective. I think, you mentioned founders. I mean, some of the people that inspired us to do this sold their businesses to Weber Shandwick, Marcus Dyer at Flipside, and Tim Drake. Those guys were a big inspiration for me personally in doing it, and they did extremely well out of their own out. That's a real success story. Same with the guys at Prime in Stockholm, Charlotte Witter, and those guys I think did a terrific job. So I think it can work, and I certainly don't think we're scarred having seen it from the inside. But this is a wild ride, and I think the three of us know that we're going to look back in our career, when we're retired. And we're going to know that this was the best bit. So why would you be in any rush to bring that to a close. We're not. We've got a lot left that we want to do, and we want to prove to the industry. And we're only sort of 5 years into the journey. We think we've got a lot of building left.
Right, we've got PRmoment EOT lunch coming up, which there's another thought, but we'll leave that one for another day. The lots going on in the holding groups, aren't there? A lot of mergers, probably going to be a fair few mergers. Who knows? How do you guys watch that? I mean, it's in one sense you feel a bit sorry for the people involved with all the uncertainty, but you must also look at it as competitors and thinking how can we take advantage.
Yeah, I think we obviously spent 33 years at Weber collectively, and I think we, have a lot of happy, positive memories from those times, and we learned a lot. But I also think those holding groups are, it's not revelatory to say, facing a lot of challenges, and I think they are large, quite slow moving, quite conservative, quite cumbersome at a time when clients more than ever are looking for speed, agility. Particularly with things like digital, social, AI, etc. I think it's a really tough job that the likes of a good mate of ours, John Hughes, who's just gone to do EMEA for Burson, Helen Bennett, again, we absolutely love Helen, running Weber in Europe. Like those are really tough jobs. And, I think they're exciting jobs. I think they're stimulating jobs because, we all love a challenge, but to get those companies get fit for purpose again, right sized in the right areas, I think is really difficult. And then I think at the holding group level, that problem is just magnified even more. I also think the sell of, come to WPP and we will provide you with media buying and brand and PR, and you will get the best in class person from every single agency. I think clients just know that's bullshit. And Ben, you and I both know it goes in cycles, right? There's the period where clients have to buy, often when it's budgets are tight, clients have to buy at the procurement level, and therefore they have to go with the holding group. But I think most clients want a super group of the best agencies, and with so many good, medium-sized, pure play experts in different sectors like us. I think it's a great time for us. I think we can outflank these big agencies. I think we have done over the last 5 years, and I think if they're honest with themselves, they'd probably agree with that. And our sales much more straightforward. We were built in the cloud era. We're dynamic. We can move quickly. We haven't got a whole, stack of, property sitting underneath us. We haven't got a whole stack of liabilities. We haven't got 400 people built for one, reality, having to morph and change into a new reality. So I think
that's true, Joe, isn't it? All that's absolutely true. And there's no doubt that, the independents have had a good 5 years. I mean, you could argue it might be a bit more than that. But in terms of market share, the holding groups still hold majority. Yeah, I mean, it depends where you go with that market share analysis. But you're talking about the big PR briefs. They're still pretty dominant, right?
I think that is getting less true. And put it this way, I think it's a lot easier to win against the big agencies now, where it wasn't previously. And I think we can speak from both sides of the fence here, because it became extremely difficult to sell Weber Shandwick when we were running Weber Shandwick. It was bloody difficult. You'd often find yourself in a pitch when clients were like, well, I'm definitely going to pick, this independent, but I've got to throw Weber in as well just to keep the boss happy. And that was deeply frustrating. And I think it is tough to sell the big agency model in today's world. But, I still believe that every business can thrive if they employ the right people and put the right people in the business. And it is just about the 7 squares on Zoom and how good are they, right? Those people can always win a pitch.
I'm a Google Meet man myself, Joe. But Joe, Charlie, and David, that was fun. Thanks so much for coming on the show.
Cheers, Ben.
Cheers, Ben.